In 1138, an English army defeated an invading Scottish force at the Battle of the Standard. The Scottish king at the time was David I. David was the brother of the now long dead Matilda of Scotland, who had been the first wife and queen of Henry I of England. Matilda was the mother of the Empress Matilda, whom Henry I had designated as his heir to the throne of England before he died in 1135. However, Matilda's succession did not go uncontested, and she was beaten to the crown by her cousin Stephen of Blois. Very quickly into King Stephen's reign, however, trouble began to brew. One of the sources of that trouble was David I of Scotland. David had two motivations for invading northern England. One, to press the claims to the English throne by his niece, the Empress Matilda, and two, to capture territories in northern England. In 1137, David made his first move against the usurping King Stephen by invading Northumberland. By January 1138, David moved deeper and deeper into English territory, causing devastation as he went. Men, women, and children were murdered in cold blood, towns and churches burnt to the ground, and children from high-born families were led into slavery in scenes that were reminiscent of the Viking raids of centuries past. Although medieval chronicles were given to exaggerations at times, and sometimes massively so, it's safe to say the conduct of David and his Scottish army was particularly shocking. King Stephen marched northwards and arrived in Northumberland, forcing David into a hasty retreat. However, David did not make a full retreat, and instead set a trap, hoping to take the English king by surprise. The plan didn't work, as Stephen instead marched to Scotland, launching a revenge attack and causing much destruction to the Scottish. However, David was undeterred, and he continued a brutal campaign. He sent his nephew, William, to march further southwards, where William and his band of men raided Yorkshire, again killing innocent people regardless of sex and age, and again taking members of the nobility, mainly women this time, as slaves, and where they looted a monastery in Craven. Boosted by the success of William's raids further south, David continued on his violent campaign. With Stephen preoccupied with matters in the southwest of England, the English king was now reliant on his northern nobility to save the crown he had won, or stolen, less than 3 years earlier. The nobility quickly made preparations for battle, although they did send a small group of men to negotiate with David, offering Northumberland to David's son Henry if the Scottish king would leave England immediately. The offer was rejected with contempt and dismissed out of hand. Battle was now inevitable. The two sides would meet at Northallerton in Yorkshire, and the battle will be given the name of the Standard, from a mast that was hoisted upon a cart by the English army, on which they hung a container holding the communion bread, hoping for divine inspiration. Also on the mast, the banners of northern bishops were flown. The battle began, and the Scots quickly sustained heavy losses, and it wasn't long before many of the Scots decided to flee, with David I among them. The battle had lasted little more than a few hours. Although the victory at the Battle of the Standard had been an emphatic one for the English, and a victory that was received gratefully by the King of England, it was hardly a decisive victory. David gathered his forces together again and forced Stephen to negotiate a peace settlement. David was allowed to keep Carlisle and Cumberland, whilst his son Henry was given the earldoms of Northumberland and Huntingdon. The result of these negotiations rather sums up what would be a pathetic reign for King Stephen. He had essentially been bullied by the Scottish king, and he had only averted complete disaster because of the military capabilities of powerful men in northern England. If the Battle of the Standard had been lost, then Stephen's kingdom may have been lost also. But his problems weren't over yet. In fact, they had only just begun. He still had the Empress Matilda to deal with.